Hello, this is your video for Chapter 3, Unit 1, Part A. This section is going to be all about dividing fractions. We'll start easy and then get a little bit harder as we go. So here we're going to start with dividing a whole number by a unit fraction. And a unit fraction is where your numerator is 1. So here we've got Lee cut 2 pies into pieces that were each 1/4 of a pie. How many pieces did Lee cut the 2 pies into? So dividing is splitting up into equal pieces, right? So we're splitting those 2 whole pies into 1/4. Okay, so 4 equal pieces is what we're splitting each pie into. We're also trying to figure out how many times 1/4 goes into 2. That's division as well. How many times does this go into that? So how many times does 1/4 of a pie go into 2 whole pies? And you can see here in the picture, we've got our 2 whole pies and we split them up into 1/4. Each pie has 4 pieces. So then total, I'm going to have 8 pieces, sorry. So you can see here that we can do 2 times 4, the number of pieces I split it up into, and it's going to get me the same answer as opposed to 1/4 going into 2. And that's sort of the whole point. That's how we divide fractions, is we multiply by the reciprocal. So if we had 1/4, my reciprocal is 4/1. If I have 2/3, my reciprocal is 3/2. If I have 1/8, my reciprocal is 8/1. If I have 3/5, my reciprocal is 5/3. So instead of dividing by a fraction, we're actually going to multiply by the reciprocal to get our answer. And it's the same thing. Think to when we were subtracting a negative number, you're kind of doing the opposite of the opposite, same thing. So multiplication is the inverse of division, and your reciprocal is like the flip of your first number, so the opposite of the opposite. It's the same kind of mentality there. Let's move on to the next slide. So here we've got a bottle contains 2 quarts of cooking oil. A chef uses 1/12 of a quart of cooking oil each day. How many days will the bottle of cooking oil last? So we're trying to figure out how many 1/12 servings are going to go into that 2-quart bottle. How many times can we split up that 2 quarts into 1/12 servings? So again, it's the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So if I'm doing 2 divided by 1/12, because I'm trying to see how many times this goes into that helps you determine the order of your division. Then it's the same thing as doing 2 times 12/1, which is the same thing as 2 times 12, which would be 24. Okay, and you can even think about that if you were to do a different visual from this and split up 2 quarts, each of those is 1 quart, and you split them up into 12ths. Split them up into 12ths, you know you would have 12 over here and 12 over here, so it would be 24 total. All right, let's move over to the next slide. So Raina cut 3 paper squares into a number of equal pieces. Each piece was 1/6 of a square. So visually, if you look at it, here's my square pieces, and I cut them up into 6. How many pieces do I have? Well, I had 6 pieces here, 6 pieces here, and 6 pieces here. So altogether, I'm going to have 18 pieces. So my problem was seeing how many times 1/6 goes into 3. So it was 3 divided by 1/6, which is the same thing. It's equivalent to 3 times 6/1, which is just 3 times 6, which is 18. Okay, so here we just have some problems without a word problem. So if I have 3 divided by 1/5, that's the same thing as saying 3 times 5/1, which is 15. If I have 7 divided by 1/4, that's the same thing as saying 7 times 4/1, which is 28. Remember, when you multiply fractions, you just multiply straight across. If you have a whole number, you can put a 1 underneath. So this is the same thing as 3/1, and 3/1, and 7 over 1 and 7 over 1. So if I have 4 over 1 divided by 1/2, that's the same thing as 4 over 1 times 2 over 1. 4 times 2 is 8. 1 times 1 is 1, so my answer is 8. Okay, I'm not going to run through every single problem here. Now, what do we do when we don't have a unit fraction? So here we've got a proper fraction, 2/3. So I'm trying to figure out 2/3 into 5. So this means if I have 5 whole pieces, so here's 1 whole, 2 whole, 3 whole, 4 whole, and 5 whole. And you can see those little lines, they split them up into thirds there. We're trying to figure out how many 2/3. So I'm taking each third and then I'm pairing it up with another one. And I'm trying to see how many times the 2/3 will go into that 5. So it goes in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, but then look, there's this little guy left over. That is half of the group of 2. Not the thirds, the group of 2 that I want. So that's half that I'm going to have left over. So if I go down to the problem, it was 2/3 into 5, which is the same thing as 5 times 3/2. So if I do 5 over 1 times 3 over 2, that's 15 over 2. 2 goes into 15, 7 whole times with 1 left over, which is where the 7.5 comes from. They simplified their answer back into a mixed number. Next problem here. So 7 divided by 3/4. So I've got 7 whole groups. Whoops. I've got 7 whole groups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I split them up into fourths, and then I'm trying to see how many groups of 3 are going to go into those 7. Okay, so again, trying to figure out how many times 3/4 goes into 7. So my division problem is 7 divided by 3/4. And again, same thing as 7 over 1 divided by 3/4. And that's equivalent to 7 over 1 times 4/3. So then I would do 7 times 4, which is 28, over 3. 3 goes into 28. Let me write over here. 9 whole times, that's 27 with 1 left over. So my answer is 9 1/3. Okay, and here are some blank problems. I'm not going to run through every single one again for the sake of time, but just so we understand. So 4 over 1, working on the first one up here, divided by 4/7 is the same thing as 4 over 1 times 7 over 4. The reciprocal, multiplied by the reciprocal. This right here is a great time to practice your cross cancellation if you know how to do it. We're going to go over that in class. But if anything in your numerator, when you're multiplying, because this is the same thing as 4 times 7 as 1 times 4, if anything in your numerator cancels out with anything in your denominator, it can be simplified. You can just cross cancel those out. So my answer is going to be 7 over 1. If you don't know how to do that, that's okay. We're going to practice it, but you're just going to do the full-on multiplication. So do the 28 over 4, and then you would simplify from there, which still gets you to the same answer, 7. So again, these problems set you up to cross cancel, and we're going to practice that together. But if you don't know how to do that, it's okay. Do your multiplication and then simplify from there. Okay, so let's do, again, so this one, let's look at 13. 5 over 1 divided by 10/13. That's the same thing as 5 over 1 times 13 over 10. If you don't know how to cross cancel, you'll do 5 times 13 over 1 times 10. If you do know how to cross cancel, you can see here that we've got a 5 and a 10 we can cross cancel. Again, we're going to do that sort of over and over again. So I hope that helps, and I'll see you guys later.